Hi everyone, I'm Oscar, and I'm going to discuss the question, which is better, stocks or real estate? I'll start with a hypothetical that compares the two, and then I'm going to give you some real world numbers based on my own experience. When I say stocks, I'm referring to, in particular, index funds, by the way. And just a quick disclaimer, I'm not a financial advisor. This is for informational purposes only. So say you have $100,000 to invest and you're wondering whether you should invest it in an index fund or into real estate. Let's begin with number one. Let's say you want to put it into an index fund like the S&P 500. Well, historically, the S&P 500 prior to COVID, because after COVID, there was a crazy run-up, but you would see about 8% returns over a 10 or 20-year period or longer. And so if you put that $100,000 into the S&P 500, then 8% per year would mean you would gain about $8,000 in gains on average per year. What about real estate? Okay, so for real estate, let's say you buy a property, a single family house for $100,000, probably somewhere in the boonies because there's not a lot of properties out there for that price, but there are some, believe it or not, in the US, just not in Southern California. And so you put it into real estate, $100,000, you buy the property in full, in cash, and you plan to rent it out. And you plan to rent it for about $600 a month. So in a year, that's about $7,200 that you would be gaining from your $100,000 investment. And that is about 7.2%. Now, you might say, okay, how did you get the $600? Okay, so I used a little bit of just deduction, based on, I know that most lenders, when you borrow every $100,000, typically you end up paying about $500 in the mortgage, in interest and principal per month. So this is assuming that you're getting enough just to cover the mortgage and maybe a little bit of extra for profit. So 8% versus 7.2%. Those are the two numbers that you're comparing, and in this case, yes. But what are some of the other factors to consider, right? Because is it just that simple? Is it stocks are better? All right. Well, I'm going to discuss some of the pros and cons of each of the two types of investments. Sorry about my cat in that last shot. If you could hear or see her, she thinks she's a little soccer player and she takes her food and just tosses it around. Okay, so what are some of the pros and cons of these two types of investments? I'm going to use my cheat sheet here. So the pros and cons. So for stocks, a pro is that it's liquid. That means that you can put money in, and then if you need to, for an emergency, you can sell some of your stocks or the index fund again and get some of that money out if needed. Although really, you should try to leave it there for the long term so it has more time to grow. You can start with very little money. Nowadays, you can start investing with $10, $20, I think. I don't know if there's a minimum anymore for some of these brokerages. For real estate, some of the pros are it's a tangible asset, so that means you can actually kick it. You can kick the house, whereas stocks are a paper asset or a digital asset now, right? It's not something you can, kick or push. So in addition, for housing or real estate, you can add value to the property if you're someone that can put in some of your own time and energy and effort into it, or you can hire someone to add a bedroom or make it nicer, and those things should add value to the property. So what are some of the cons? Okay, so for stocks, there can be fluctuation. Not every year you're going to see 8% growth. That's an average. So you have to be okay with seeing and being able to stomach some of those downs and ups and know that the trajectory in the long run is going to be positive. And a con for stocks, not if you're investing in the S&P 500, but if you're stock picking, then you might be taking on more risk. And if you're a day trader, same thing. You're taking on more risk because you're not relying on your continuous contributions to average out your costs of investing over the long run. Okay, some cons for real estate. Well, it requires a lot of money to get started, especially if you're in Southern California. So it's difficult for people that are just starting building their wealth to participate in real estate investment. Also, proof of income is required, which can be a challenge for some, especially after COVID. If you got to be able to show like 2 years of tax returns and steady income. Renters from hell, that's a scary one. If you rent out your property and you get a squatter, someone that just stops paying you, and some states are very renter friendly, which is a good thing in general, but there are people unfortunately that take advantage of it, and they can stay in your property at no cost legally for up to 12 months in some cases. And then the third one that I noted down as con for real estate is it's not as easy to take the money out. It is possible through a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, or if you refinance, but those things usually take time, and there's cost involved. So there's a quick summary for you of the pros and cons. Okay, so you're thinking, okay, those are hypotheticals. What about, the real world numbers, right? Okay, so I'm going to share with you a spreadsheet that I put together to help break down the profit analysis on a condo purchase that I made back in 2015. I still have the condo. I have not sold it yet, but I have some estimates from Redfin, and I've made my own conservative estimate for the purposes of this calculation, to show you what that might look like. All right, so I'm gonna screen share, and you'll be able to see on there that I purchased the condo for $246,000 back in summer of 2015. And I've refinanced a few times, so some of these numbers are estimates, but the monthly payment is roughly about $1,500 a month. And you can see the breakdown of all the costs that I've had over the last 6 years of owning the condo. And in total, that's monthly payments, which includes mortgage, interest, and I've averaged out the monthly for property taxes, insurance, the HOA, and I've also included in here some costs for improvements, fixed up the bathrooms a little bit to make them look nicer when the wife moved in, and also I've estimated cost of the sale to be at about 5%, since the sellers pay both agents, the buyer and the seller's agents, when you sell the property. And so in total, I've incurred about $188,000 in costs from the point where I put the down payment in the summer of 2015 to today. Okay, so if I sell the property for a conservative estimate of $400,000, and the loan that remains is about $167,000, then that means I would get proceeds of about $233,000. Okay, but if you back out all the money I've put in over the last 6 years, the $188,000, that means I have a net profit of about $44,000, $45,000 if you round up. And if you average out all, or if you take that profit and divide it by all the money that I've put in over the last 6 years, and you divide it by the number of years, then you can see that the average return per year, that's a quick and dirty way to get the average, is about 3.74%. Now, you might say, okay, well, what about the fact that you've been saving on rent from not having to pay rent somewhere else? And that's very valid. And so underneath that, what I've done is I put that I probably would have to pay at least $1,500 to rent somewhere. And so savings from not having to rent over the last 6 years, a significant number, about $114,000. And so once you include the net profit, including the savings from rent that I didn't have to pay somewhere else, the return on average per year goes up to about 13.3%. Okay, so it works out well if you can find a good property at a good price, and you're saving from having to pay rent somewhere else. So that's a little different than if you're buying a second property to rent out, where it might be harder for the numbers, for the returns to match the returns of investing in an index fund like the S&P 500. Okay, so now you're waiting to hear me say which is better, right? Well, the answer that they taught me in business school is that it really depends, right? It depends on if you can get a good deal on real estate. As I mentioned, if you can add value to the real estate property yourself, or you have some people that you work with, then real estate could end up providing you with better returns than investing in the stock market. But if you're someone that you are just starting out and maybe you don't have the money to buy real estate, stocks and index funds are providing you a fairly comparable return. And so, it's just a question of which one appeals to you more, right? The pros and the cons. It depends on also, the cities where you live. How expensive is it to buy or to rent, right? Because if it's really affordable to rent and you're willing to also get creative, in some cases, if you live in an expensive city, maybe you can split the cost of rent with some friends, or if you're okay with living with your parents for a longer period of time, then you can save more money that way. That's how I was able to save enough to put the down payment on the condo. So there you have it. I hope you found this useful. And as usual, if you enjoyed it, hit the like, subscribe, notification bell, leave a comment, and thank you for watching.